Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course that makes this episode 16 of Circles and Squares. And Kate, we're officially on the PS5 countdown. We are 2 weeks from November 12th.
Yes, at time of recording, we are exactly 2 weeks away.
How are you feeling about it?
Oh my god, I'm counting the days. I'm so excited.
It's officially like the countdown is on now,
It's
right?
officially like, yeah, each day gets ticked off the calendar and like, oh man, there was a new Demon Souls trailer that came out today. I don't know if you saw it, but it was basically just gameplay. And instead of like a cinematic cutscene or whatever, it was just gameplay. And like, oh my god, it looks so good.
Does it look like they've made any changes at all to like the mechanics of the game at all, or is it just like a upgrade visually?
I feel like they did make some change. I don't know, actually. I don't know if they've said. There's definitely been a lot of speculation online about changing things. I never played the original Demon Souls, which is part of why I'm so excited about it getting a remaster, because it was inconvenient to go back and pick up an old copy of the game. So I'm kind of going into it like very fresh. So I'm sure there's going to be some purists that are like, oh, it's not quite as good. They changed like slight deviations, but like, oh man.
We'll wait and see. You're not too far away. That's your launch game, obviously. So,
absolutely.
So yeah, let's just talk about the PlayStation 5 launch for a second in terms of like our plans on the show to talk about it and cover it for you guys. So our initial plan, just looking at my calendar here. So if everything goes well and we get our systems on the 12th, on that day, we're planning to put an episode out on the following day, which is Friday the 13th. Ooh, spooky. We're going to put out a bonus episode on Friday the 13th with our impressions of just the console, like the way it operates, like the OS, the UI and everything, and also like the hardware itself. Stuff like that, but no games. And then we'll talk about the games we're playing on the PS5 on our regular episode, which will be Monday the 16th of November. So that's if we get the console on time. That's option one. If we get the console late, if there's like a shipping mishap or they get lost in the mail for a couple days, we're still planning to put out PS5 content basically as soon as we have the console. So whether that is us talking about the console on the regular Monday episode on the 16th, or if we don't have it by then, as soon as we do get it, we'll put a bonus episode out whatever day we have that. So did I get it all right? I feel like there's a lot of dates moving around.
I think so. It's a lot of dates, a lot of information, but ideally there will be, our regular episode will be on the Monday regardless. Ideally we get our consoles as soon as possible, and then we can give a little bonus episode to talk about how we feel. First impression, having the console 24 hours, this is how we feel. That's
right. So yeah, just follow along on our Twitter at CNSPod. We'll put all the updates on there. But yeah, expect a lot of content with PS5 going forward, especially one bonus episode hopefully in there if we get the console on time. But yeah, that's next time. That's episode 17. We're of course doing episode 16 right now. So we're going to obviously start the show with the games we've been playing. We're going to move into the news after that for the second part of the show. And then to end the show, we thought we'd change it up a little bit because we both tried out the free Immortals Fenyx Rising demo on Stadia. And so we're going to give, just what we thought of the demo on Stadia over the weekend we tried out and let you know. So without further ado, Kate, what have you been playing?
Well, before I tell you about that, I have one tiny extra bit of housekeeping to do. And I'd like to apologize for a comment I made on a previous episode where I have been talking about Gloomhaven on PC. And I have been informed by my lovely friends that I play with that I said the game was ugly or, not very visually appealing. And I had been playing on kind of a shitty gaming laptop. So recently I had my computer fixed, and I have a beautiful computer PC that plays everything on the highest settings, and it's like, I've come into a whole new world, and Gloomhaven actually looks fantastic. It was me. It was not the game. There's fire textures now. There's beautiful details on the walls of the caves you go into. The enemies have little arrows sticking out of them, their models, and tons of details. So to everyone who's played Gloomhaven is like, what the fuck are you talking about? This game is quite pretty. It is quite pretty.
It's like your impression went from RuneScape to Skyrim. Or
yeah, absolutely. It was like a slider that just zoop and oh my god, I've made a mistake.
That's fantastic.
Speaking of pretty games though, what I've actually been playing mostly is I've been playing the new multiplayer for Ghost of Tsushima. So Legends came out recently, and it was hyped up for a while. People were really looking forward to it, and I've hopped in on some matches.
What an amazing content drop as free content.
Yeah, you know? And I'm honestly really impressed with it. Like, nobody expected this. I don't think they needed to put out a multiplayer or even like any kind of DLC updates, because the game itself is, you know, it's very detailed. There's a lot to do. It's a single player focused story game. So I was really not expecting any multiplayer at all. And like normally when those kind of games get a multiplayer, I just don't really bother with them because like they kind of feel like a little bit tacked on, or like I'm just happy enough with the content in the base game that I don't really feel the need to.
Yeah, I think it kind of speaks to, like, I know in the PS3 era there was always a focus, like the PS3 360 was like, well, here's this single player game, but here's this weird multiplayer side mode because we feel we need to include it. Like Uncharted did it, and like Gears of War
like
did it.
Assassin's Creed had it.
Like, yeah, no one. I don't know. I feel like there are exceptions. Like people, I think, really enjoyed The Last of Us Factions, so that was like one example. But overall, like I feel like even Legends for Ghost of Tsushima is a bit of an anomaly as far as like people's opinion of it compared to like the base game.
Yeah, exactly. So it was surprising, but I was like, I'm gonna check it out, like out of curiosity. And I'm impressed. Like, I think I will actually like continue to play this from time to time. I think definitely if I had someone who would play with me, we'd play a decent amount. But even just hopping online with some random people is nice. Like, there's some quick matches, which is kind of like a horde defense sort of game.
And that's the 4-player mode, yeah?
That's 4-player. And I've done a few of those. It's fun, but like I feel like it might get a little bit like samey. Like, I don't know how much of that mode I'd actually play. But there's story missions that you play co-op with two, like you and one other person, and those are incredible. Like, they feel kind of like story missions from the main game, but it's neat. You're working with someone, and there's like a narrator who goes through, and because the whole premise of the game is it's like legends, and it's like they're telling like mythical stories within the world, and then you're playing out those stories.
Does this take place before or after Jin's story?
It's kind of separate, I think.
Oh, okay.
So it's just kind of like Tsushima, the like island and the culture has these stories of like monsters and like Oni, and it's very much based on like Japanese myths and lore. So you're kind of like just going through those stories, like this monster was like ravaging the town, and like the ghosts had to put an end to it, and then you're the ghosts that go and do that. So it's kind of neat because the base game is, you know, it has some like kind of like mythical elements, and you get like some like powers and stuff, but for the most part it's like relatively grounded. Whereas in this, it like they've got the flexibility to kind of like make a lot more unusual, or like, you know, things with like special abilities, or like a big monster comes and fights you. It's not just like a war general or something.
Right. So they have a bit more creative license, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got a little bit more flexibility with what kind of aspects they want to put into it, and it's really good. Like, even playing online with some random, like I had a great experience, and they've done a really good job to make you naturally work together instead of just like one person's running off and killing a bunch of guys and you're, you know, trying to figure out what you're doing. So the best experience I had was this one guy and I hopped in, and we were playing through this mission, and it was about like this monster that was like kidnapping or like taking over twins, but he like soul bounded them. So it had a mechanic where two enemies would be like soul bound together, and if you had to kill both of them, otherwise the other one would start to resurrect. So like you'd go into a situation and you'd both like you know, like I'm taking the guy on the right, you're taking the guy on the left, and you'd fight. So there's a few times where we both like done like an assassinate or like killed them at the exact same time. And we're like, yeah,
that's
like,
awesome.
Really like getting a companionship going. And then we were like sneaking through this grass at one point, and there was two guys in front of us, but like they were kind of looking our way. So I pulled out my bow, I looked at him, he pulled out his bow, and we like kind of like gave each other the nod, and then like we both headshot the enemies and they died, and we just stood up and like started emoting to each other for like a couple minutes before we moved on. And it was really cool. Like it feels like, it doesn't feel so much just like a tacked on multiplayer. It just feels like, yeah, it's kind of a neat mode that I'd hop in every now and again.
Yeah, well, I know were planning to do this mode since before the game was even released, like when it was in conception. So obviously it's not the kind of thing where they're like, oh shit, this game was really successful, like we better make some mode just to put in there. Like this is obviously, you know, thought out and planned and very intentional. So I'm really glad that it's got that success.
I agree. It definitely feels like a bit of a passion project. And There's still some content for it that is not out yet.
Yeah, they're doing the raid later on. Once
yeah.
you have to get your gear and all that.
Yeah, the raids are coming soon. My only complaint with it so far is I feel like it's kind of a weird decision that they locked the classes behind progression. So
really?
There's 4 different classes in the game. You have like your samurai, who's kind of like a frontline pseudo-tankish kind of thing. You got the hunter, which is focused more on the bow. The assassin, who specializes in like stealth and takedowns. And then you have the ronin, who's kind of like your support and healer. And you start out with the samurai, which I guess kind of makes sense. He's sort of the most like all-rounded, kind of like most similar to Jin. But then you can't play any of the other classes until you get to a certain level. But the weird part about it is when you first play the game, it does a little tutorial and shows you all the makes you play as all the characters for like a small mission. So you've already kind of tested them, and then they all kind of start with the same base moveset, that's Jin. And the only difference is they have a special ability at the start. And then as you go and you level them up, you unlock more special abilities, which diversifies them further. So because they start so similar and don't really like start to feel vastly different until you've leveled up more, it's weird that you don't just have access to them all from the beginning.
Yeah, that's weird, because you'd think if they were going to give you tutorials for each of them at the start, you just have it open, or you do the tutorial as you unlock it.
Yeah, exactly. And like it makes sense to start with something that's more similar or to like the base game, and then if the other classes are more complicated or nuanced, to unlock them later. But because they're not really that nuanced at the start until you progress further, it just seems like a strange thing, like a strange barrier. Like I was really excited and I wanted to play all the classes before talking about it, but like I just unlocked the other classes this morning and haven't really had a chance to like test them out too much. So
which one do you think you're most looking forward to playing, if you had to guess?
I personally really like the samurai because he's got a lifesteal mechanic, which is something that always excites me. I don't know what it is about it, but lifesteal to me, I always like, I'm on board 100%. I really like the support class. Seems really cool. Like he can heal and res allies, and then he also has like a little spirit dog he can summon and everyone can pet it.
Hell yeah.
So like I played one this morning and I finally got the dog guy because nobody's playing him, and I finally got the dog guy, and then we did like the defense, and we like, okay, waiting for the next wave, and as we're waiting, we're all lined up to pet the dog. So like
wholesome, man.
It's
wholesome
so
gaming moments.
Yeah, but it's good. It's got all the online trappings of like, okay, every level, after we match, like here's your rewards, you leveled up, like you got some points to spend, you got some loot that you can either equip or like get rid of, but like it just like feels really fun without being like incredibly competitive or serious. So
right, and it's not too much games as a servicey in terms of like grinding for loot or grinding for level ups and stuff.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it so far. I don't think there's not a currency system where you can pay for stuff, which is nice. So you don't come up with like one guy who's like, you spent $20 and now you're just going to carry the whole scenario by yourself. But it probably takes a while to unlock everything, but it seems like you get stuff pretty consistently so far, at least. So
nice, cool. Hey, you never know. Maybe I'll get it on PS5. We can do the missions together.
Yeah, that would be really fun. Yeah,
we'll
it's definitely good. If you have a buddy to queue up with, I think you're going to have a really good time. And then aside from that, the other thing I've been playing is I have access now to a VR setup.
This is so exciting. I cannot wait to come play.
Super exciting. Yeah, you're going to have to come play. So yeah, my boyfriend got the Oculus Quest 2 recently. So we've obviously been playing a lot of that. I think maybe on a future episode, I'll maybe go in a little bit more depth with some of the games, but just as a
But what do you
quick
think
overview,
of the Quest?
The Quest is fantastic. I like it a lot. It's super convenient, the Quest, as well, because you can play on the go. It doesn't have to be hooked up to a PC.
Yeah, and that's the major thing. Like that's the reason I think that's the one I would like to try next. Like I've tried PSVR and I forget which one they have at the VR-cade you go to. I don't know if it's the Quest, like the original Quest, or if it's a different one there, but sure. But whatever. Maybe it's a Rift.
Might be a Rift. But yeah, I mean, we're playing like connected anyway because that way the battery doesn't die, and we're also like streaming it to the TV so that like we can watch what the other person's doing, and it's just a little bit more fun, like when you're switching off turns. But man, it is so fun. You look like the biggest idiot when you're playing, but like, man, do you feel like the biggest badass in the world?
You get lost and you're like, I don't even care if people are watching right now. Like, I'm in this thing.
Yeah, and like, there's some games that are just like the pinnacle. Like Beat Saber is the pinnacle game for VR. Like, it is just fantastic. And we played a couple other games. We played Pistol Whip, which is sort of like if Superhot and Beat Saber had a child, and that's really fun. We played the shittiest Pokemon VR game. Never play it. Never played it.
Well, it's not even an official game though, right?
It's not official. It's buggy and awful. And like, I mean, it's really great that someone made it. And I think, that it's wonderful. But at the same time, like, it's not fun. It's not good. We caught a Pokemon and we're done. Yeah. And the other thing we're doing, which I maybe will speak on later, is we sort of modded it. And this is where it gets very finicky and like, it's like, VR is kind of like a boat, it's like, I don't want to own a boat because man, that's a lot of maintenance, but I sure wish someone I knew had a boat because like, it's very fun. But like, and to be fair, the caveat on that is like, we're using some like third-party apps and like, putting it into things that it's not necessarily designed to use. But like, it feels like almost every time we use it, it's like, well, here's an hour of like getting it to work before we actually play.
Yeah.
Which
that's the trade-off of like third-party content.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're like a tinkery person and you're kind of into that tech stuff, then it's probably almost kind of like a benefit than a negative. But we've modded it to work with games that don't have natural VR support. So like we got Alien Isolation working in VR.
Oh, Jesus.
And like, horror games in VR, like, I don't know how I feel about it yet, but I definitely like the idea of watching other people play in VR, which I guess means that I also have to take a turn, otherwise it's unfair.
Right, yeah, makes sense.
But at the same time, like, yeah, I'm happy just playing Beat Saber. Like, Beat Saber is the quintessential VR game, and like, it is so fun.
Are you progressing? Are you getting to be like very proficient?
Yeah, we're pretty good. I mean, we feel good because we're playing on like hard sometimes, but like there's expert and expert plus, and like when you start those, you just want to curl up and cry because like, it's so overwhelming.
That's awesome. Wow, I can't wait to come try it. But yeah, well, I'll get into my stuff then, I guess. I'm gonna confess something here, and I'm in a weird spot with games right now. For two reasons. Number one, I've kind of decided I'm not going to really buy too much more now until the PS5 comes out. I know it's only a 2-week span, but I was kind of self-imposing that before this anyway, for the last week or two. So I kind of been in this weird limbo where I haven't got a new thing to play. And then to compound that, I've just been completely reabsorbed and addicted to Persona 5 Royal, which I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about on the show because we've spoken about Persona 5 and I'd more or less rather wait until I finish it to just round it up all at once. But I am going to talk a little bit about it here just because I played so much of it. And if it's what I've been playing, I got to talk about it, right? So yeah, I'm just like totally addicted to Royal. I've just started the 4th Palace, like the storyline of the 4th Palace now. Won't spoil it for those of you who are looking forward to playing it, but you know what? You know which is the 4th Palace. I won't even try and give you a hint.
I know which one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah. So
good music on that one.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's all good music, but I think the music is actually my one complaint as far as the Royal goes compared to the regular.
It has a slightly different soundtrack, right?
It's got most of the same songs from the original still included in it, but there's some new songs coming in, and it's not that they're bad, but my one specific problem is there's a new battle theme for regular battles where you ambush an enemy from stealth instead of just running into them. Oh, okay. So if you run into them, you get the regular battle theme. But if you ambush them, you get this other theme, which is a great song, but I don't like it quite as much. And because I'm always ambushing enemies, like I rarely ever go into battle
it's very easy stealth to attack.
So I end up playing the song I don't like quite as much, and I'm like, it's still good, but I wish it was switched. Such a small complaint because the rest of it, like all the changes, I'm really enjoying. Like I love the little tweaks they've made and expansions on certain things. Like there's this dungeon called Mementos in the game where it's basically the procedurally generated dungeon area.
It's kind of where you go to do like side quests and like.
Yeah, grinding and side quests, and they've added a couple new things to that. So there's this new NPC down there, and you can collect flowers throughout Mementos and give them to him for different upgrades, and you can you know, collect these stamps also at different stamp stations, almost like you're going to a tourist attraction, and you stamp your thing.
You got a little like Disneyland passport.
Exactly, yeah. And if you collect enough stamps, you can buy upgrades, like you get more experience from battles fought in mementos. So it's got a bit more to do down there. And then they've also just made it, you know, some other changes, like there's new ways to fuse your personas together. There's this thing called a fusion alarm, where if you fuse during the fusion alarm, you have a chance of increased stats, or like different moves your personas can't learn, but they can get them in this one circumstance. But also you risk a chance of like, it'll just fuse into some really shitty weak persona instead of the one you want. So it's a give and take thing. And then the only other thing I'll speak on is like, I'm really enjoying the couple new confidants they added. I've started to develop relationships with both of them. They're pretty interesting. And I think that it's a really good thing that they've added 2 confidants alongside giving you more free time in the evenings, because with all the free time, you have more time to hang out with them. But also, if they didn't add more, I feel like you would have been able to really get most everything completed in your extra free time. Whereas you still have that choice of like, oh, I don't have time to hang out with everyone. I can't possibly increase all my social stats. So you got to pick and choose like what you want to do.
Right. Yeah. I that was a good thing the first game did, where like it kind of struck that balance nicely of like, everything I do with my time feels important because like it's limited resource I have, but at the same time it wasn't like super punishing in the sense where like I feel like I wasn't able to do anything.
Yeah, and I think that same balance has been struck so far in this one too, so I'm really pleased about it. I think this game's a bit easier than the base game so far, and it might just be because I'm more experienced at Persona now. Like when I played the first one, it was my first ever Persona game.
Right.
Now I've beaten Persona 4, come back to this. So.
Right, and like when you come into battles, you know like that enemy has this weakness, and you don't have to spend like a few fights like figuring that out.
Yeah, I just think there's a couple ways it has been made easier so far. Like there's this thing now called Showtime attacks, which is where 2 of your party members will basically team up for what is like a super attack. It gets this cool animation and everything. And they just happen randomly, but they're like really powerful. You're basically going to kill any normal enemy in one shot with this attack, and you can choose who to aim it at, and it just kind of like takes the stress away from some battles, because you'll be like, oh crap, I'm like really in a tough spot, like I've got a guy down, how am I going to revive him? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, Showtime attack pops up, and you're like, well, I guess I'll just like win this battle.
I guess it's Showtime.
Yeah, it's Showtime. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit easier that way. And then also there's these new collectibles in the palaces called will seeds, which are like different skulls that have different aspects of the boss, and you're supposed to collect them, and they're little hidden treasures that give you something to find with the grappling hook. It's a cool idea, but when you find them, it's not like I'm saying it like it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. When you find them, they also give you a bonus, like they restore some of your health and SP points. So it allows you to explore the dungeons for longer without having to like go back and heal, which means you can hypothetically, like I've completed all the dungeons in one day. Right. Which is, I mean, you could do that in the base game too, but it was sometimes a struggle to like, oh, you're really scraping by as far as your resources.
You'd be tough right at the end. I think I did most dungeons in the base game in 2 days. Yeah. And like, I probably could have maybe pushed it for certain dungeons, but it was just like 2 days is a fine use of time. And like,
that's kind of what I was doing too, and that's my plan going forward, but I haven't really felt a need to leave yet because of the recovery from the will seeds and like a few other things. Like you can also recover SP by doing baton passes as well. So baton pass is like if you make a critical hit, you can pass it along to the next character, and like they power up, but now they can also recover some SP, so it just makes it a little bit more forgiving.
Right.
It's probably a good thing.
Is there a difficulty option in this one?
No, there's not. No.
I wonder if that might have been a good thing to add, because I feel like some people would pick Royal up as their first one, so like maybe that difficulty is better for like your first time playing, but I think a lot of people come from like loving P5 and then wanting to play Royal as like a second playthrough. Yeah. So like a harder difficulty might have been nice for like someone who's like returning, almost kind of make it like a new game plus kind of feel to it.
I guess, but at the same time, it's like I don't have to use the Showtime attack if I don't want to. You know, like you don't have to go and spend your time to level up the baton passes if you don't want to. Like it's a hanging out and playing darts, and you'll improve it. So there are ways to get around it. Right. I think the majority of the ease I'm having with it is because I'm experienced with the game now. So, and these are still like the first 4 palaces. Like it does get harder as you go on. So so I'll reserve judgment on it, but like I'm loving it. I can't wait to play more. I'm hoping that that I was originally like naively planning to be like, oh, I hope I can beat this before a PS5 comes, because of course I had the Steelbook, like the disc, so I actually won't be able to play it on my PS5 because I got the digital version.
That's exactly what I'm doing with Ghost of Tsushima, and I'm kicking myself. I'm like, why didn't I just get the digital copy, like you idiot?
Well, I don't regret getting it, but now I'm just like, oh, I wish I could finish it before the PS5. But there's like I've probably got like another 60 hours of gameplay. Like there's no way. Yeah, maybe even longer.
I've got more than that for sure. So my PS4 is going to be sitting in my entertainment system
if there's room for
quite a while. Well,
so aside from that, I got a couple other things I'll just talk about briefly, just to not make it only Persona. So I've also played the start of a game, Costume Quest 2. I don't know if you've ever heard of Costume Quest.
Oh, I played a little bit of the first one.
Yeah, I beat the first one, and it's just like a cute little game, I guess. There's nothing to really like rave about, but it was enjoyable. You're basically a bunch of kids, and this is very much similar in the sequel. You're just a bunch of kids going around this town. It's like a light RPG. You're going around, you're collecting candy. The crux is your character classes are based on what Halloween costume you're wearing. So I have one character that dresses as a pterodactyl and can do like a swooping attack.
That's the coolest kid.
And then there's another one who's a superhero and can like punch and whatever. So the cool part is I guess that they the costumes also have abilities outside of battle, similar to like a Paper Mario situation. So the pterodactyl can flap its wings and like blow big piles of leaves out of the way to take you down secret paths. Or the superhero can actually, I don't think the superhero has an out of battle ability now that I think about it, but it's just stuff like that. Like in the other game, you had a robot costume, so you would when you're wearing that, you could move around quicker because you had roller skates. So it's just kind of cool environmental puzzle solving based on like the costumes you have, and just it's a lot of fetch quest kind of thing. Like, hey, I'm currently at a spot where I have to go across this lake, and I need to use a boat to do so. But the guy who owns the boat has to get it fixed, so I have to go find the mechanic. I find the mechanic. Oh, I'll fix the boat for you, but you got to give me 100 pieces of Halloween candy. So now I've got to go trick or treat at all the houses and defeat the enemies inside to get Halloween candy to fix the boat, to stuff like that. So
those games are good. Like it's just if I've played a bit of the first one, like they're just charming. Like, and sometimes you want to sit down and play a 200-hour masterpiece, but sometimes you just want a nice, relaxing, like fun, charming game to play for an evening. And like,
it's like a 5-6 hour kind of short thing. And it's, I mean, I would never be like, hey, you have to go play Costume Quest, but it was one of those like, hey, it's free on Epic Game Store. Like, I've got an evening. I don't feel like playing Persona. Let me try this out. Get a couple hours.
Exactly. You want something a little more small scale.
Yeah.
And it's very on brand because it's
Halloween. Yeah. Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween.
We're almost there.
You
Stay
played
safe.
Costume Quest. I beat Resident Evil 7, which was great, and I've already talked about it before. But hey, spooky Halloween.
It's perfect. And then I guess speaking of Halloween, I also jumped back into Apex Legends a couple times recently.
Very scary, that game.
There's a Halloween event going on.
You never know what those people online are going to say to you.
There's a Halloween event. But I jumped back in. Season 6 is just ending in I think like 4 or 5 days. So season 7 then comes after that, obviously, and I'm planning to get back into that for the upcoming season, especially since, playing it on next gen, I think would be pretty cool. They've added a crafting system to the game since I last played it, which is new to this season. So along with guns and weapons, you're finding like currency around the map to go to different distribution centers, and you can use it to purchase like different things instead of having to find it. So that's kind of neat. And I just got to like compliment this game. And I think I might have said it before, but I just love the synergies between the character abilities. And to me, like that's what makes it just the best battle royale, better than Fortnite or God forbid I play PUBG ever again. But like this one is just like you have the great gunplay, and then also it's like what character abilities, like an Overwatch kind of game that you put together. So it's like the synergy of both those systems coming together. I think it's excellent. Like we have this one game the other night I was playing with 2 friends, and I was Lifeline, who's the healer.
I like Lifeline a lot.
So the healer character, and then there's 2 other new characters called Rampart and Loba. Rampart can put up shield, like chest high walls, I guess, for cover.
Right. Yeah.
But they have this force field, and if you shoot through them, your bullets do extra damage. Okay. So you can hide there and kind of use that as cover. And then there's another character named Loba, and she basically puts down this portable shop, and it has a radius. and everything within that radius, you can pick 2 items from it without actually having to go and like open a chest or find it on the ground.
That's kind of neat.
So you're able to like, okay, we're in this building, we got the high ground, like we're gonna set up these wall shields, open the store, take what we need, stay supplied, heal people. Like it's just such a great synergy. And then there's another character, like my favorite character is Bloodhound, who's a tracker, and you can see people's footprints and like scan a room and it'll show you like where people are. And using that with a character named Wraith, we had a lot of fun because Wraith can put down...
Oh, she's the portal girl, right?
Sorry, not Wraith. Revenant.
Oh, okay.
Revenant, and he's this skeleton guy, and you can put down a totem where you go and activate it, you turn yourself into a ghost, then you can go out and fight for a short amount of time, and if you die, you just get reincarnated into your body instead of dying. Oh, okay. So with Bloodhound, I would like locate the enemies, then the totem, we get like a free life to go and attack these people, and just kind of like take advantage of knowing where they are. So it's just cool stuff like that. On top of the game, that just feels so good to play with the guns and
that's
move
really
around.
Cool. I remember playing a bit of it early and enjoying it and just thinking it was a good game, but it seems like it's evolved a lot in terms of like team comps and a bit more of like strategy elements. So
it's
cool.
An awesome game, and I think it really gets lost in that conversation with Fortnite being so big, but there's always like Spellbound and all these other ones coming out that are get the headlines. Like Apex, I feel like deserves, it's a big game, but I think it deserves even more recognition personally. But you go Respawn, like do your thing. Awesome game. But that's gonna do us for the games we've been playing, I think. So we will take a quick break and come back to talk about the news, including the new PlayStation 5 UI, so don't go anywhere. All right, guys, welcome back. We are here to talk about the news. And Kate, we have recently gotten to see, well, maybe not recently, within the last week or so, the PS5 UI and kind of like the look of the new console. I personally think it looks really clean, and it's got just enough similarity to the PS4 and like other consoles that you're, you know exactly what everything is, I feel, when you look at it, but it's just a different change. Like, what do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree. The key word I've written down actually is clean as well. Like, I like it. It looks like very modern, I guess, in the sense of like it's got that kind of like sleek sort of look to it, I guess, that you just don't really see in like older UIs. Yeah,
so I mean, we're not going to take a lot of time to describe it to you, I guess. Like, go look at it.
Yeah, you've probably looked at it already.
Yeah, it's got like the same kind of home screen thing. It's got a little menu bar that kind of appears at the bottom. And then the card system is like the big new change, I guess. Like when you use the menu in a game, the game kind of still keeps running in the background, and the cards and little menu at the bottom kind of appear as an overlay instead of like bouncing you back out to the main menu. And I kind of like that personally, because I feel like so often it's like you just want to quickly look at something, or like look at your friends list, or check your trophy quick, and you don't necessarily want to like minimize the whole game and go into your menu that way. So I like the fact that it kind of just pops up and integrates with like what you're already doing.
Yeah, it looks like it's just going to be a little bit more fluid and a little bit more user friendly. I kind of like to my like, but also slight concern is like when you're on a like on a game, for example, and it shows you like things you might also be interested in, like other games, or just like different content for the game you're on, like maybe a DLC, or like maybe some kind of like a workshop page for it or whatever.
Yeah.
And I like that because it's really convenient, and it often like leads you to find things you might not necessarily have found otherwise. But my one concern is I really hope it's not bogged down by a lot of ads.
Yeah, I was feeling the same way.
So,
because that's the one thing, like I guess I had the same thought, but on a bigger level, like to what extent I would like to know, like, can you customize the cards that show up when you use the menu? Because for one thing, like if I'm going for like a certain achievement in a game or a certain quest, I'd love to have the counter of like, hey, you have 15 out of 30 of these items you need to collect. But what I don't want is like, hey, the DLC's on sale, or like, hey, these are games that people like that are similar to you. And I just wonder like how much customization they're going to give us in terms of like what cards we do or do not, or like what order they show up.
I think it's just important to have customization, especially when you're in the cards, like in game, because it's a little bit more like invasive, I guess, if there's ads in there. Like, I'm fine if it's on the screen before I've started the game up. Like, I almost kind of like it. Like, sometimes when I have like a couple minutes on Steam, for example, I'll look through like my discovery queue and see what kind of games it recommends for me. Like, it's just kind of fun to browse. But when I'm in the game, I don't want to be browsing other stuff to buy. I want, like, you know, what I want to see for the game I'm currently playing. So I think it would be really unfortunate if that gets bogged down a bit, and then you just probably wouldn't end up using it. You'd Google whatever you're looking for on your phone.
Speaking of Googling on your phone, one of the features I'm really interested to see, like, how effective it is the built-in like guides and clips of, like, if you're stuck on something, you can pin a video clip or like look up a tutorial or like a walkthrough video on the console, and you can even, not only can you watch it like right on there, you can pin it to like a corner of your screen and play while you're watching it.
Yes,
and
that is so cool.
I wonder how effective that's going to be, because on the one hand, that's, if you're really stuck on something or you need some advice, I bet it would be quite useful. But at the same time, like, how convenient is it going to be to like pull up the on-screen keyboard, type in what you're looking for, like, or is it more intuitive than that? You know, I wonder how much people will use this, because obviously too, it takes resources from like the developer or to make these video tutorials. Like, are they going to be included for every game? Is it someone's job at PlayStation to go through every release and make these videos? Or like,
I got the impression that it was going to be kind of like a community thing. So I got the impression, and I could be wrong, but it seemed to me that it was like you yourself would upload me doing like the puzzle that, you know, like the puzzle on level 3, and then, you know, if someone's on that puzzle, then that video would kind of populate for them.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I didn't think about it like that.
I'm assuming it's going to be something like that, which means that it could also be like some kind of like, there might be funny content on there too, like people doing like dumb stuff. But like what made me think of the most, actually, there's a place in Canehurst in Bloodborne, in Canehurst Castle, and there's like a lever you have to find to like either drops a ladder, moves a bookcase, or does kind of some sort of like, it's like a how you progress. But it's just like, for some reason, it's one of those things where like once you know where it is, it's super obvious and like it's very clearly visible.
I was gonna say, I never had a problem finding that.
Yeah, and it's like, it's so obvious. It's like, oh yeah, it's right there, I can see it. Like, I don't know how I missed it, but like for some reason, whatever, it's just such a common thing that I see pop up on Reddit. And I think even I had a little bit of trouble finding it personally. And like people are like, what the hell, like I'm stuck, where do I go? And they're like, oh, there's a lever in this corner. Like, oh my god, like, yeah, okay, I can't see it, but like those kind of things I think would be like perfect.
Yeah,
it's like,
for when you need a video specifically, not just like a guide you can read through, but like a clip of just like, where the hell is this thing? Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, okay, I know I'm supposed to be here. I know I'm supposed to be doing something or like finding something, but I just can't find it. I'm getting frustrated. Oh, 30-second video. Oh, it's right here. I'm really dumb. Click the lever.
Right. Yeah, I can see it being very, very useful for that kind of thing.
But then at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's kind of neat. And I like that you can have it playing while you're, you know, in the corner, and that's really cool. But at the same time, it's like, is it going to be more convenient than just looking on my phone?
That's
like,
the question, right?
Yeah.
Is this just like a feature that is going to be ultimately phased out because it's still more efficient to use your own internet or whatever? You know, speaking of video in the corner though, another cool thing is you can pin gameplay of one of your friends to the corner. Like, you can watch them play as you're playing your own game too. And I think that's an even more interesting perspective, especially if you're playing co-op with somebody. Like, imagine if you're doing like Ghost of Tsushima co-op and like we were playing that together, and we can pin a small corner of like, so we can see where each other are and use that for like teamwork aspects.
Yeah, that would be so
awesome.
Cool. I like that a lot. I think that's fantastic. And even just thinking like right now, it's such a good time for it, because like just to even have like kind of a social aspect. Like right now, like me and some people I know, like we're playing a lot of games online more so than we used to do, and part of it is because like, you know, like some of us live alone, and like it's nice to have that social aspect. And like there's times where like we'll play a game, and then, you know, we're done with that game, but we're all just kind of like sitting around like hanging out and like kind of doing our own thing, but we're still talking, you know, like nobody's left the Discord yet. So it'd be kind of cool to like put that up and just like, okay, I want to play Ghost of Tsushima now, like, but like you're gonna play X, and like we'll just kind of sit and hang out, but I can sort of like see what you're doing at the same time.
Yeah, because it has that experience, because I do the same thing sometimes, but it's like, oh, you guys will never believe what's happening in this game, but it's like you're not really watching it. I'm like, we're not on Twitch, so but just being able to do that like so easily on your console, if it works well, I think is a really cool feature. But anything else about the UI you wanted to point out?
I don't think so. I mean, there's still a lot to see. Like they mentioned, like music apps and stuff are gonna look. The media stuff hasn't been shown yet. But I think overall, like it's overall my impressions are good. It's similar, recognizable, but it looks like it's just got a few nice upgrades and a fresh coat of paint. So.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it just looks like a more efficient and minimalist layout for what the PS4 currently is. And for me, that's like what I would ask for, because I think the PS5 or the PS4 UI like isn't flawed in its design. It just looks a little like it could be improved, and it could be probably run a bit smoother. So as long as that's what this is looking like, which to me it is, I'm impressed. So.
Yeah. Well, so far so good, and we'll let you know our final opinions once we get the console in 2 weeks' time.
Well, hopefully, cross your fingers on the mail. But Kate, let's move along to our next story. This one kind of ties in, though. It's almost like a 1B story. This is the PlayStation 5 mobile app is getting an overhaul. For me, I don't know how much you use the PlayStation 4 app. Or I guess it's just the PlayStation app in general. But to me, I use it like decently often. I do a lot of my PlayStation Store browsing on there because I just don't really like the on console experience. And I'm excited about that. I also like how they're letting you finally message in the PlayStation app again instead of having to do like the
it's two separate
opposite.
apps
Yeah,
for
it's really
messaging
strange.
and actually looking at stores and stuff, which is really bizarre to me.
Yeah, well, it's like, hey, manage your friends list on the PlayStation app, but if you want to chat, you got to get the chat app. So it doesn't make sense. I'm glad they're consolidating it. And the app itself too looks, just from the video I've seen online, unfortunately we don't have the update where we're at right now, so we haven't been able to try the app. But just looking at like the video presentation from Sony on it, it looks in line with like the sleekness of the PlayStation 5 UI. So I'm assuming obviously they're going to work compatibly quite well. And I really like just the aesthetic and the way that they're putting everything into one and not, cluttering your phone with 3 or 4 different apps depending like what you want to do.
Agreed. And the thing that stuck out to me, because I will admit I don't really use the app much. The reason I downloaded the app the first time was because I sent you a screenshot of Ghost of Tsushima that was really nice, and I was like, I want this picture on my phone so I can send it to someone who's not on PlayStation Chat. So like that's why I have the app, so that I could go into the conversation on my phone and like save the picture.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I don't really use it. But what is incredibly cool to me, and I'm assuming was not a feature on the app currently, but you can like pre-download games from the app.
No, you can do that now.
You can do that
I've
now?
done it before, yeah.
Oh, that is so cool. That I have not been utilizing, because that is cool as hell. Like I'm thinking like, I mean, this is obviously like if I ever am not working from home in the future again, but like, okay, classes are finally like back in session and I'm gone somewhere, and I'm like, oh man, Demon Souls just came out today. I'm so excited to get home and play it. And then you're like in class downloading it and like, it's ready when you get home. Like, oh.
That's exactly it. Just because these games are such big downloads, we're getting digital PS5. So, I mean, it's a first world, like,
first world
problem.
Sure.
Like, oh, I got to wait for my game to download. But realistically, if you got like a sizable, like 20 gig download for a game, or sometimes like obviously even bigger, like Call of Duty was 100 gigs and like that's going to take you some time. So being able to start it early while you're out, nice little convenience nugget there.
Oh, shit, I have not been utilizing that feature.
I
just found out about it, and oh my god, it's so cool.
Get into it. Do you see yourself getting into like the more social aspects with the PS5, if it's like really easy to do the sharing and like the messaging?
I don't know. I think it depends. Like I don't think I will personally, but I would in different contexts. Like all of the people that I play games with online, I kind of like already have different platforms that I use. Like I use just like, I know them in real life. We either use Discord for like game kind of related stuff, or like we have our own messaging apps that we use. But like, and I don't play tons of multiplayer on PlayStation. So I haven't really like made friends through the console in the same way I've like made friends on like a computer game that, is a little bit more like multiplayer focused for me. So I think like if I had a multiplayer game that I was playing on PlayStation and I met people, I would message them through that, because I wouldn't necessarily use my like personal stuff.
I'm totally with you too.
Yeah.
I feel like PlayStation and every platform to some extent wants to make like their own ecosystem as far as like, hey, interact with your friends over PlayStation. But it's also like I'm really active on Twitter, and I tweet about games all the time. And to me, it's like, well, I'm not going to post on PlayStation. I'm going to take a screenshot, use the share button, and just upload to Twitter.
Yeah.
And why, it's like just so ubiquitous. There's no really any reason to change because they've made it so easy to integrate like your social apps with PlayStation. So yeah, I'm with you, but I might use it a bit more depending how easy it is.
Yeah,
and,
it depends.
If people start using it with me, then yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the kind of thing. It's like if I meet people who like that's where they communicate, then I would probably hop on and use it socially like that. But like it's not going to replace what I'm currently using.
100%. Yeah. All right, so our last story, if we get to that quickly, just a smaller one here. Destruction All-Stars, PlayStation 5 launch title, is actually not going to be a launch title because it has been delayed till next year. I think, is it February or they say a day?
I think they said February.
It's been delayed, but the cool part is it's going to be free on PS Plus when it comes out instead of being a full price release.
Yeah, and this kind of almost feels like they're like, we're sorry, like don't be disappointed, but like, hey, there's a new benefit.
Yeah, I think it's a really smart move. Just in the sense that we just saw Fall Guys have so much success on PS Plus. Rocket League did it before. Those are like the two classic examples. But especially for a game like this, I feel as though it'll have so much more success coming out in terms of like public perception, because it won't be like, oh, that game's not worth, this new increased $70 price point. It'll be like, wow, this is a great experience to have for free, quote unquote, on PS Plus. Get a lot of people in. They got their new console. Maybe they don't have the biggest library yet because the games are pricey. You can only pick and choose like what you want. And so this is going to be a huge offering, I would imagine, similar to spoilers, Bug Snacks on PS Plus for PS5. I think it's only good news for the game itself.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like this game struck me as the kind of thing too, where it's like if it comes out with a price point. Like, even before all this news, when I first saw it, I was like, if it comes out with a price point, it's going to be one of those games that, like, in 5 months goes free to play anyway because people weren't buying it. Like, and then it's not to criticize the game. It's just that those type of kind of, like, couch kind of party sort of, that multiplayer style game, it's just, that's kind of the expectation people have a lot of the time now is, like, there's free to play versions of a lot of those games, and then you choose if you want to spend money or not. And I think that they're going to get I agree. I think they're going to get a lot more success. Like, I think the amount of people that would have bought the game is much lower than the amount of people like, I will try it because I have access to it. And then they end up really liking it.
Well, that 100%, right? Especially at launch because people are forking out money for the console. They're forking out money for at least one, maybe 2, 3 launch titles. Like most people, I would imagine, that are going to be early adopters of the PS5 are not going to buy Destruction All-Stars for full price over Spider-Man, over, Cyberpunk, over Demon's Souls, over Ratchet & Clank when it comes out, I'm assuming relatively near the launch. Like, it's going to be so far down priority list.
Yeah, exactly. And then combine that with all the other free games we're already getting that are massive collection titles. So, like, yeah, I feel like it would just kind of, like, get overlooked.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, okay, I have an hour and like I kind of feel like doing something a little bit like fun and silly. I'll try out Destruction All-Stars. And like,
we are in agreement for Destruction All-Stars. Kate, before we get out of the news segment, we have one more thing to go over, which is, of course, our PS Plus games.
Absolutely.
For November 2020.
Oh, and I am so excited about
announced.
These ones.
Now, these ones, of course, there is a special Bug Snacks release. There's 3 PS Plus games for November 2020. But one of them, like I said, Bug Snacks is coming free to the PS5 for PS Plus subscribers. So we will have that game when we get our consoles. But for now, we still have 2 choices for the PS4 offerings for the month, which is Hollow Knight Void Heart Edition and Middle-earth Shadow of War. So for those of you that are new listeners to us, we pick one PS Plus game a month each to take and play for the next episode to give our little impression review on whatever. So, Kate, you've played a lot of Hollow Knight in the past.
I have played a lot of Hollow Knight in the past. I have gotten over 100% completion on Hollow Knight. I think like 110 is what I'm sitting at, and I think 112 is like full or something like that.
Perfect. So I would like to say that I, for the first time, I'm going to play Hollow Knight for PS Plus this month, unless you have any objection.
No, 90% of me wants you to take it because it is a phenomenal game and I want you to experience it. 10% of me is like, oh, I really wish I had an excuse to play more Hollow Knight.
Hey, you still could, but it's going to be my PS Plus game for November, which leaves you with Middle-earth Shadow of War.
Middle-earth, okay. I will admit that I have played a little bit of Middle-earth in the past, but I will definitely pick it up on PlayStation and see if my opinion has been changed of the game or...
All right. Well, we'll let you know how those go with our next episode. Of course, if there's PS5 content coming out, it won't be replaced by something like this, but we'll get it all in there. Don't you worry. Anyway, until then, we'll take one more short break and be back again with our impressions of Google Stadia right after this. Hey guys, we are back for the last part of the show where we've been doing something different, not PlayStation related at all. Of course, we tried the Google Stadia demo. So for those of you that don't know, Google did a demo over the last, I guess it's about a week and change, where they were letting people try Stadia for free with Immortal Fenyx Rising. I think Google did some Stadia demos in the past, and it's been some free-to-play stuff on there before, but neither of us checked it out, so we thought we would do it for today's show and let you guys know what we thought. So we're going to start, I think, just by going over our impressions of Stadia itself, and then talk about Immortals Fenyx Rising afterwards. So, yeah, Kate, what are your thoughts on Stadia as a platform?
Overall, I was relatively impressed with it, especially, coming into it with a little bit of like reservations of how well it was going to work. So I think important to note is my internet is like, I would say pretty average.
Yeah, I think I got pretty average internet. I think I'm like, I don't know, 15 megabytes down or something. Like, it's not super fast or anything, but it's like the standard around where we're from.
Yeah, exactly. Like mine is pretty average. Like I would say like I never have trouble downloading or like playing things online, but I also don't have like the fastest instant speed. So for me it worked pretty well. Like I really liked it's kind of like a funny little detail, but I like the integration of when you tab out, it like pauses the game for you and then you like tab back in. So I thought that was kind of cute. And then overall it ran quite well. I think I played for about an hour and I had 2 times where it lagged. One was not a big deal because I was like just in menu or something, and then one I was like running, and then so like it lagged for a second and I kept running, and then when I came back I ran off a cliff and died. So that was unfortunate.
Yeah, I think in terms of that stuff for me, I had a little bit of a more choppy experience than you did. Not that I would say probably 75% of the time it was quite smooth and relatively playable. Maybe a little bit of delay in like my control compared to a regular console, but the other 25% of the time there was probably once every 10 or 15 minutes I would have like a pretty big drop for a second, and then I would kind of come back. But the rest of that time would be spent like the game was still playable, but the textures would kind of decrease in quality, or the draw distance, or just different things kind of wouldn't look quite as good as they would if I was playing with like a great internet connection, or like if I was playing on PlayStation or Xbox or something. So I think it's totally was playable like how I was playing it, but I wouldn't want that to be like my experience for most games I'm playing. Like I wouldn't want to be like, oh, I'm so excited for Cyberpunk, but I'm gonna play on this kind of connection. Like I feel like it would cheapen the experience.
Yeah. Well, and you seem like you're being like quite generous with it, because I was thinking and like it probably worked great for, like I said, I only had those 2 hiccups, but like in an hour 2 hiccups to me like that is like, oh, I wouldn't get it. Like,
well, but I think it like depends on your perspective. Like if it's your only way you're gonna play these games, I think it's more than playable. That's
true. Yeah, it wasn't like ruined, and I think it depends what you're playing too. If you're playing like a turn-based strategy game or something, then like it's annoying to have a hiccup and have to wait a second, but like it doesn't, there wasn't necessarily a consequence. But playing like an action game like this, like I fell off a cliff and died, and like that sucked.
Exactly.
It was funny the first time, but like if it happened consistently, it would be very frustrating. It wouldn't
be funny every time you sit down to play, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the other thing about it too is I'm not so, just speaking about like the look of it, it doesn't have that same kind of console on a computer feeling like I got with especially like Steam. You can do the big picture mode. It feels almost like your computer is a console when you kind of full screen Steam and do it like that. And similar to even like the Xbox app for PC, it feels like you're using Xbox just on a computer. Whereas for Stadia, just looking around like the store page and the different profiles and everything, I just feel like it felt like just like a website, like a storefront on a website.
Yes.
And to me, that makes it feel less compelling to use.
Yes, I 100% know what you mean. Like, it feels like you're just playing a game in browser.
Yes.
Well, which, like, technically you are, yeah. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily, and I don't know, like, how much that matters, but it definitely is kind of unusual when you're used to, like, like, loading up an application versus, like, being in a web browser.
And there is a Stadia app, I guess you can use, but at the same time, they always advertise it as like, play a game in your browser, play a game on your phone. So that's the experience that I wanted to go with. It is really cool having a game open in a tab though, and just like kind of exiting the game quickly, tabbing back to like read Twitter or whatever, and then going back and just clicking on a tab, the game opens back up. Like it's pretty cool technology in that way. And I'd be excited to use something like this in the future, like whether it's xCloud or Stadia or whatnot, like when it gets to the point where it's, you know, high-end experience, reliable experience. I feel like it would be really cool. Yeah,
I agree. I think I'm not about to adopt it. At the same time, like I don't really feel the need to because I'm so well established with, you know, my other platforms I'm using. But like, it's definitely cool. And I was overall like, it worked better than I expected it to. So overall, I'm impressed, but still not, you know, fully on board yet.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
But anyway, what did you think about Immortals itself, the game?
Yeah, let's get into the game. I personally, I'm very lukewarm on it personally. I can really see. Now I got to preface it too. Like I'm not a Zelda person. I've never played really Breath of the Wild beyond like trying it out for an hour at a friend's place. So I feel like my impression's very much like separate from Zelda, which is I think a lot of people's comparison point. So for me, I like the character design of the world. Like maybe not the characters themselves, but like the character of the world. Kind of like the environments look really nice. The grass is really neat looking. Yeah, just like the water and the environment's nice. To me, I like the emphasis on like combat and puzzles. It almost feels like the same mix of like a God of War would have in terms of like maybe a bit more exploration, but like puzzle and combat, nice combination. But to me, the storytelling is a cool concept, how it's kind of like, so the game is framed like Zeus is telling a story to another one of the gods. I can't remember who it is, but he's basically making up these details and it's like a third wall breaking narrative. And to me, that is very hit and miss because it's kind of humor, like to me, doesn't always land. There's a lot of stuff I'll say about like the combat later. Maybe we'll talk about it together, but like those are my overall impressions. Okay. So I would say like it's not bad, but it's not something that draws me particularly. But
that's
yeah,
fair.
What do you think?
I was pretty positive on it. It's funny that you bring up Zelda because the first thing I thought about it was like, I haven't played Breath of the Wild yet. I intend to at some point, but I haven't gone around to it. And I wouldn't say I'm like a massive Zelda fan just in general. Like I really enjoyed Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I really like both of those games. The newer games that have come out since have just been kind of for me. Like I don't love them, I don't hate them. Breath of the Wild looks interesting, but haven't played. But that was the first thing I thought. I was like, this game feels like what I imagine Breath of the Wild feels like.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does feel like Breath of the Wild, the climbing and everything.
It's
like
very open world, kind of like exploration, puzzles, combat, kind of is the holy trinity of those three. And like, it's kind of got that sort of like charming, uplifting kind of like world that's like, it's good for kids, but then there's also like a lot of like hidden stuff and challenges for an older audience as well. So yeah, I think that comparison is it's like if early God of War games and like Zelda had a child. And like,
yeah, I guess you could say that.
But yeah, overall I really liked it. I liked the Zeus and the dialogue. Like, yeah, maybe it probably wouldn't be as funny like 200 hours in or however long you're supposed to play this game, but there was a couple times it cracked me up. Like it was just really cheeky and kind of silly, and like it played on the like Greek myth pretty well. I think. Yeah. Like there was one time early on where like Zeus refers to Odysseus as a sailing enthusiast. Like that cracked me up.
Yeah, I mean there's some good lines in there. To me it was just one of those things where it's very much a certain kind of humor that isn't my thing. Like it very much could be like, well, there was a centaur there. Oh, just a centaur? No, not a centaur with a giant beard, or like, and then it would just pop onto him, and it's kind of like that style of humor that is not for me.
Yeah, exactly. I think like, it's going to be definitely up to your preference.
What did you think of the combat and everything there?
The combat I thought was good, period. I think it wasn't it's not the thing that would draw me to the game. I think the combat seemed like it was very serviceable for what it was supposed to be, but I think that's perfectly fine because for me, like the main focus and the main like design philosophy for this kind of a game, to me anyway, is like the exploration in the world. So the combat doesn't have to be like obviously like the better the combat is, that you're gonna get more out of it. But for me, it's like as long as the combat is fun and serviceable, it doesn't have to be like the best combat system. You know, like I'm not expecting it to be like Dark Souls because you know, that's kind of not the point of the game.
Yeah, no.
So I thought it was fine. Like I liked it. I didn't love it, but I think it's like good enough that it doesn't seem like it would get super tedious or like draw the game down in any way.
Yeah, I would say good enough is is like a really apt way to describe it. I my biggest problem with the combat is there's zero weight.
Yeah,
I feel like you have this heavy attack and you can swing this axe, but to me like maybe there's a bit of weight in terms of like your character winds up to swing it, but there's no like contact weight.
Yeah, it doesn't feel super responsive to you as a player.
It doesn't. And like the same with like especially your main like melee weapon, at least for the demo, is just very much like you're just hammering as quick as you can, slashing around, but there's no like contact. You can't feel it. What I will say about the combat though is that it has I didn't know if you did too much exploration into like the skill tree and like how you'll be able to customize later on, but I kind of looked through it and there is a pretty expansive, you know, point system to upgrade your different skills and get different abilities. So I would imagine you can build it and make the combat a lot more fun as you progress.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of options for like, you get these special moves, you can spec more into like, I get bonus damage if I'm like in the air fighting versus like, you know, I'll kind of do parries a little bit more. So I think there's like enough customization that like, I think anyone could sit down and have fun with it. And like, either, yeah, like I said, like it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. My biggest complaint with the combat actually is I hated the controls.
They are weird, right?
They were super weird. Like, okay, first of all, you don't put dodge on square.
On square, right?
Dodge does not go on square. That's not okay ever. Like, dodge is circle. Dodge is always circle. I will defend that to the day I die. And the weird thing about the Stadia demo, I don't know if you had this issue, but like I couldn't change the controls. It gives you the option, you can go in and like remap your controls, but the problem is that like each button, because there's so many different things you can do, has like multiple functions.
Just like, before we get any further into this, what controller did you use?
I used a PlayStation controller.
Okay, so did I. Yeah.
Yeah, I use PlayStation controller. That's always the controller I use on PC because it's, you know, what I'm most comfortable with. So I went to remap it, and it was really smart because oftentimes when you play on PC, it just assumes you're using an Xbox controller, and then you have to like mental math. Which
this one actually,
which.
It pops up like the actual PlayStation logos, which is really nice.
Yeah, this one recognized. So X is, you know, where it's supposed to be instead of where X is on an Xbox. For us anyway, so that was nice. But the problem is each move is kind of like mapped to multiple different buttons. So like, for example, like circle was crouch, but it's also like assassinate when you get really close to someone, and then it's also like if you hold it and another button, it's something else. So I wanted to just change that. I was like, I want my dodge to be on circle, and then I'll put something else, whatever is there, on square. So I went to change it, and it's like, oh, you can't because it's mapped to other things. And I'm like, oh my God, like, yeah, but I just want to change this one instance. And it's like, you can't because like this button also works for other moves. I'm like, but it's already set up that it works for 3 more moves. So then I'm like, oh, do I make a spreadsheet to like figure out like exactly like what combination is going to be okay? Yeah. And I just didn't end up not bothering.
Yeah, I had an issue with the controls too in a different way. I always like to give the default controls of a game the benefit of the doubt, unless I really, really find that it doesn't work. So I didn't try and
ideally, that's the most intuitive way to play.
Yeah, I didn't try to change much, but what I wish there was a default map button, because I feel like this game's so exploration heavy, and you're trying to go around, and the final boss of the demo is this Cyclops guy you have to go fight, and that's all well and good, but the map itself is actually quite large, and you get kind of disoriented of where you are if you're climbing around and flying around. So I like to bring the map up while I was playing just to check like if I'm on the right path. But to open the map, you have to like open the menu, which sometimes takes a second, and then tab over to the map. And there's so many games now where there's a dedicated map button, whether you're pressing the touchpad or like pressing options or whatever it is. And so I really missed that. Especially in a game that's so exploration heavy, or I imagine at least like the main full game will be like that. So it's a downfall for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like there's almost too many controls. Like it was just kind of complicated and like why when you do you can do the glide because you have wings on your back. Why don't you just tap X once to jump, tap X a second time to double jump, hold it down to fly? Like why do you have to double jump and then hold circle to fly? Like to me that seems just really unintuitive. Yeah, I think so. And like there's just other things too, like parry, for example, is like you have to hit both L and R bumpers. But it's like, why isn't that just one move? Like why, like there's a lot of moves where it's like two buttons at the same time. And like, if you're running out of real estate, then like, yeah, that makes sense. That's what you've got to do. But there's times where it's like, it seems like there would be a more simple thing, and like maybe you utilize the button in a different way, but instead they're like, no, here's just 3 buttons instead. And like,
yeah, it's a lot of the same complaints I feel people had for like Red Dead 2 about the complexity of the controls. Not necessarily like Red Dead obviously is way more tuned than this and probably a lot more complex, but it's a lot of the same principles of like, hey, you got to hold down a button and then that brings up a whole nother control scheme in which then you now use the other buttons to do for like a second function.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like a poor person who doesn't play a lot of games, like maybe you wouldn't be playing Stadia, maybe you wouldn't be playing this game anyway, but like, I feel like, oh man, like just coming into this game and like, here's a 10-minute PowerPoint explanation on all the things that you can press in this game. It's like, it's almost overwhelming for me, and I'm very comfortable with any kind of like control scheme normally.
Same here, and I still felt like to the minute that I beat that final boss that I was still questioning like, okay, how did I do that again for certain things? And that's not a good sign, because like you see, like there's very, very few times where once I played a game for more than 15 minutes that I need to like remember the controls, because it's just so innately, I don't think about it, you know, like unless it's a very obscure game control wise. So this is definitely like a knock against it for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like this is kind of the game too, where like I don't want it to be incredibly complicated. Like, I think like the biggest draw for me is like, I want to explore, I want to find a bunch of cool like loot and gear and chests, and I want to fight some cool monsters and like
upgrade your skill tree.
I feel like it's a game like, yeah, I want to kind of get like absorbed in. To me, it's a very like immersive kind of game, and that's the biggest draw for it. And like having a really complicated and unintuitive feeling control scheme takes you out of it.
So do you see yourself playing this is the question?
I think I quite like it. I don't see it being like, you know, a $70 like day one purchase. But I definitely see it being something that gets put on my list, and you know, when I'm in the mood for that kind of a game, I think I'd pick it up.
Yeah, and it'll definitely go on sale. It's that kind of thing. I feel like for me, it's not something I'm going to get.
It's just not your kind of thing.
But happy I tried it for sure.
Yeah. There's one other thing I want to say about it that I kind of think is strange and I hope gets changed. And it's like a normal convention in games, but it just felt weird in this one, is the stamina system. So you have your stamina kind of like outside of combat mostly in this game, and not so much in combat.
Yeah, because you can use it to either fly, you can like boost while you're gliding, or you can climb. You can
running
swim or run,
and swimming as well. So, and then it's used in combat, but like your main attacks, your base and your heavy, don't consume stamina, but dodging and using like really big powerful attacks like special moves do. So I think that's fine for combat, because like, you know, like it's not,
you need some power limit put on like the power moves.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Like you can't just spam your moves. Like that could have been a cooldown for the move itself or a stamina. Both work fine. That's no big deal. And it's nice maybe to have it not on your regular moves, because like it's not an extreme like combat like Dark Souls kind of game where I think you need to have stamina. So I think that's good. But it struck me as weird how they use it in the overworld. Like running, for example, costs stamina. And I kind of don't like that, because it's just sort of annoying to like be running for a little bit and then you have to stop and walk for a couple seconds. Okay, and then now I can run again. When like the focus so much is on the exploration for me. Like I understand maybe like having it for climbing so that like you can't just access everything at once, or like the gliding, like it sort of limits you on how you're able to explore, and like maybe you need to upgrade your stamina or like get some items to help you reach the tallest tower you can
that's
climb.
What they're trying to do, I think, is because they need to cap it for especially climbing and gliding, because otherwise there's no incentive to like find the upgrades to increase your stamina and then get to new places with climbing and stuff. But I agree with you for the running, because you're just trying to get around a flat surface. Like it's just a time saver thing. And I don't see how running faster is going to help you get to secret areas unless you can like run off a cliff with speed. But you could do that even if there's no limit to running. Yeah, because you just run
exactly.
To the edge.
Like I think it makes sense for certain areas, as in like, you know, a way to kind of naturally keep you from, or like naturally make you progress at a certain rate, and make like upgrades more useful and worthwhile. But yeah, the running, I really hope that gets taken out, because like it just feels bad, especially when you're in an area where like you're solving a puzzle and you have to kind of like go get an item that's
Mhm,
for the
ball
puzzle.
The
Yeah,
ball puzzle, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a puzzle in the demo where you have to pick up these balls and like put them in a certain order, but like some of the balls are kind of like a bit far away, so you have to go get them and bring them back. And like you're running, you go get the ball, and then it's like, I gotta run back with the ball, but like, oh god, I'm a little tired, so I'll walk back with the ball, and now I can run, and like, okay, back to walking, and like, it's just,
No, I hear you.
it's so tedious. Just let us run. This is the whole point of the game.
Just let us run. Come on. That's what we need.
We're clearly a very athletic character. We can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's Immortals Fenyx Rising. Gods and Monsters was such a better name.
Gods and Monsters was way better. Immortals Fenyx Rising, and Fenyx is spelled like Fenyx.
Yeah, because it's her name, right? It's her name.
Yeah, it's her name, but like,
it's a really downgrade. I guess it's because Monster had a lawsuit, I think, against Monster, the name Monster being used in games. Don't quote me on that. I remember hearing something like it was because of a lawsuit with Gods and Monsters specifically, so they had to change the name.
Oh, okay. Well, that sucks.
Either way, that's too bad. I feel sorry for you. Yeah, anyway, I guess that's what we have to say about Immortals Fenyx Rising. So because we spoke about that, Kate, I think it's time to close the show out with some listener mail.
So we got a good question, a very topical question, at least for me specifically. Matthias has asked, what game do you wish they made a VR version for?
Yeah, right. So you're just playing the Quest earlier in the week. You got probably a lot of thoughts. I'll go first.
I do, yeah. You start us off.
Yeah, so I think a lot of games could be really cool in VR. I wanted Star Wars Squadrons. I was talking about on the previous episode about like how cool I think that's going to be when I try it. So I was kind of thinking like, along those lines, like what's a neat experience. The first one I had was to have like a first person viewpoint for like a professional career mode in the sports games. So like if you're a hockey player, like playing football or something, you could actually have that view on the field. I think that would be pretty cool. But my answer I'm going to go with for this one is actually Guitar Hero or Rock Band, because I feel like Beat Saber is so much fun. It would be really neat to have like Guitar Hero in VR. Like you could be on a stage, you could be, your career could expand, you could get to bigger and bigger venues. Maybe you could be playing in like real notable arenas from around the world. You could look down, you'd see your guitar as you're playing it. You maybe if you're playing in a band mode, you could look around, you could see like all your friends on their different instruments, like on the stage. I think that would be a really neat experience and a really cool one for people that have always dreamed of like being a musician, but that's not their career. I feel like that's cool.
That's an awesome answer. I like that a lot because like, clearly it would work. It would be similar to Beat Saber, which feels fantastic. And then
well, the game itself wouldn't have to change. Like you'd be able to see maybe the note highway coming down. That's the one thing that I don't know how it would work. Like how would you watch the notes coming at, maybe they'd come at you as like out of the crowd or something. Like logistically they'd have to figure it out.
It would have to be just like the stuff you described would just be in the background of like, making sure the notes were clearly very visible and easy to see.
Exactly.
And then the other stuff would be going on in the background. And like maybe, like sometimes when you're playing that game, you have like a second where like, you don't have a note, like it's just bass for a second.
Yeah, or you could like, maybe if it's a song you know really well, you could turn off the notes and just play it and there's a button to like toggle on and off, like being able to see the notes.
That'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, what you got?
I like that. I still like my answer, but yours is really neat. So I put a lot of thought into this one because after having played a bit, and I didn't mention earlier, but like the first thing that comes to mind is like, I want to play like my favorite RPG in like VR. It's so cool. But like you don't actually want to do that because you're gonna die and you're gonna go to the hospital. Like it's getting getting your VR legs is nuts.
Well, that's another reason Guitar Hero works so well. You're standing still.
Exactly. Games where you're standing still and things come to you, or you're on some kind of like X-wing fighter, Star Wars Squadrons. You're on like what's the word for it? Where like,
you're on the rails.
On rails, yes, that's what I want. You're on rails works great because you're not moving, you're not getting disoriented. I don't feel sick at all playing those games. But when we played some Alien Isolation and the Pokemon VR game where you're actively moving around and like you're using like specifically like a joystick to do so, it is so incredibly disorienting. Like we played, I don't know, maybe like an hour of actual playing, like with some little breaks in between switching off, and like we finished playing and like we laid on the ground for like an hour and we were done for. We were both like, oh my god, like I don't know, my body's uncomfortable, I feel hot, like I'm a little sick, like I don't know, like it's so hard. And like
so what game do you want then? What's your
I'm getting to it.
I'm so curious.
So I was like, okay, it needs to be something that's like on rails, or like, it moves to me. I'm like trying to think like, and what game would actually like benefit as opposed to just being cool. And I think I came up with the best game ever, Pokemon Snap.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, right? Like, it's perfect. You move on rails, like, so, okay, no motion sickness, you got it. And, like, the whole game is just visual. You're looking around at Pokemon, taking pictures, like...
Throwing them food.
You could actually be throwing the food. You'd be, like, you know, lining up your camera shot, looking around. I think it would be fantastic.
Look, if VR continues to be a thing over the next, say, like decade or even the next console generation, it would be a crime if those two games didn't get made. But they've got to be getting talked about, right? You got to think. The trick is, will Nintendo ever actually do a VR headset?
Yeah, I think that's
besides Labo VR.
Labo VR. Build your own VR out of cardboard. Put your Switch inside it.
It's perfect. Hey, that's what you do. Mm-hmm. It actually exists.
I know. But, like, it's not what we mean.
I love it. Oh, I think that's going to close the show, Kate. Anything last to say before we hopefully the next time we get together to do a podcast, we've been playing the PS5 and we're going to be like the happiest people on the planet. Hopefully it works out that way.
Yeah, hopefully. If not, have a great Halloween. Dress up as your favorite video game character and... let us know who you were.
Yeah. You can, let us know. Get on our Twitter at CANDSpod. Twitter and Instagram. We're also on email if you want to get in touch and get your question read. We'll answer on the show at circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. Of course, all the links are on our Twitter bio, and we actually recently put a link tree on there as well now. So if you go to our Twitter bio, there's links to get to any of our content just on one click on there. So it's really easy. And thank you guys very much for listening. As always, we'll be back, hopefully, within sooner than next Monday with a bonus PlayStation 5 episode. But whenever we release another one, we hope you listen, and we'll see you then. The intro and outro music for Circles and Squares was produced by friend of the show, Matthew Chan. Interlude music is from Scott Gratton of the Free Music Archive. Our channel art was created by @unreasonable on Twitter, and our brother Alex is the designer of the Circles and Squares logo. Thank you all for listening and supporting the show.